reason for the no-nos inside of the EYB plan that actually bring freedom. Most people take one look at the EYB plan and immediately they think, wow, there are a lot of things I can do in this program. No workouts, no restaurants, no starches, no sugar, no added salt. And at first glance, it feels restrictive. But here's a key principle that most people completely miss. Every single no-no inside of the EYB plan is not about restriction. It's about retraining the brain, restoring physiological balance, and building the discipline and self-control that ultimately create freedom. I think this is important to mention because otherwise you're going to be stuck in this idea that this is super restrictive, and that is not the goal, my friend. We're not eliminating things forever. We do not demonize food groups, first and foremost, right? I think that's important to understand. We are temporarily removing them so that the body and mind can reset, because if you don't reset the system, you simply recycle the same behaviors that kept you stuck in the first place. And here's where it gets really interesting. Your brain operates through something called synaptic connections. Think of synaptic connections as little roadways inside of your brain. Every habit you have ever developed has built a roadmap, right? A little road inside of your brain. Every time you repeat a behavior, that road became wider, smoother, and easier to travel. So when you encounter a specific situation, your brain automatically takes the road it already knows. This is why people keep repeating the same food behaviors, even though they desperately want to change. I hear people say this all the time. JT, I desperately want to change. They are simply traveling the old road their brain has already paved, that road that they already know, right? They just continue going down that path. And so when someone enters the empty your bucket nutrition plan, something very intentional has to happen. We must temporarily close many of the old roads per se, right? At the same time, we must begin paving new ones, new responses, new boundaries, new behaviors, but the process takes time. And more importantly, it requires mental energy and focus. And so we got to take our time doing this. This is why many of the no-nos exist inside of this program, not to punish you, but to eliminate what we call cognitive traffic, okay? Because when someone is trying to learn a new way of eating, tame hunger signals, say no to old habits, navigate social environments differently, meal prep consistently, all these things that come when we're trying to change our lifestyle, there's already a lot happening mentally. If we add too many competing variables at the same time, the brain becomes overwhelmed. So instead, we simplify the environment, we remove friction, we quiet the noise, and we create the mental bandwidth necessary to build new neurological pathways. This is something most nutrition programs completely miss. That's right. I'm talking about keto, Atkins, South Beach, Whole30, macro counting, calorie counting, point counting. Do I need to say anymore, right? They treat this like a simple math equation, calories in, calories out. But the truth is far deeper than that. Because when you encounter food, 99% of what is happening is physiological and often spiritual. Your habits, your emotions, your environment, your identity. If those things are not addressed properly, you simply end up like a hamster on a wheel, running hard, trying again, starting over, and repeating the same cycle year after year. The empty your bucket nutrition plan was built to break that cycle, that craziness of yo-yo dieting. And once you understand the reasoning behind the no's, you begin to see something very different. You realize that they're not restrictions. They are a blueprint for freedom. And so I want to show you a couple of things here because I really want to show you the freedom behind all of this. Okay. And now here's what's really interesting. Most nutrition programs try to add more things to your life, more workouts, more supplements, more complicated meal plans, more tracking, more rules. You know exactly what I'm talking about, but they often fail to understand something very simple about human behavior. When someone is already overwhelmed, adding more complexity usually makes things worse. Inside of the EYB plan, we do something counterintuitive. Before we start adding things, we start by removing things, not permanently, but intentionally, because when you remove the right variables, something very powerful happens. Clarity increases, discipline becomes easier, and the brain finally has the bandwidth to build new habits that actually stick. Think about it this way. If you were trying to repave a highway that had thousands of cars speeding across it every minute, it would be almost impossible to do the work. But if you temporarily close the road, you can rebuild it properly. This is exactly what we do in the first phase of the EYB plan. We temporarily close certain roads so we can build better ones. And that brings me to this, the 7 no-nos inside of the program. Okay, so buckle your seatbelt because you're going to hear some things here that maybe you haven't heard before. And I just want to take you through all 7 of these no-nos inside of the program. Each of them has very specific purpose. Each one removes a type of friction that normally causes people to fail. If you failed, you've probably done some of these things. So I think if you're watching this, just pay close attention because I want to help you with this. I want to get you away from all of the yo-yo dadding and all the craziness that you've probably experienced. And when you understand the reasoning behind them, you stop seeing them as restrictions and you begin to see them as strategic tools for transformation. So let me walk you through them one by one, because once you understand why they exist, everything about this process starts to make a lot of sense. So number one, and probably one of the ones that I get the most resistance about, is no workouts for the first 6 to 8 weeks. This one surprises most people because, of course, we've heard you have to work out in order to get in shape. Right? Most programs tell you need to exercise more. We intentionally pause the structure because workouts for the first phase can be tricky. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons. We are creating a significant caloric deficit in that first phase, right? Not hunger pangs, not restriction that's crazy and you're going to feel, you're not going to feel weak or any of these things, but the caloric deficit through nutrition alone is pretty significant. And when people start exercising, immediately something predictable happens. Exercise increases hunger, more hunger increases the chances of mishaps and overeating. Instead, we allow the body to burn stored energy first. Once the metabolism stabilizes and hunger signals recalibrate, exercise is gradually reintroduced in a later phase, right? And so we kind of hold off on all of those things until we can actually properly address the exercise component without it tapping into your energy or any of those things or causing you to have mishaps. Number 2, no added salt and no excess sugar. Salt and sugar are 2 of the most powerful hyper-palatable triggers in the modern food environment, okay? Your brain doesn't actually recognize them nutritionally. Your brain recognizes them neurologically through pleasure. They stimulate the dopamine reward system. That dopamine is basically those neuroreceptors associated with well-being, right? Over time, this creates an elevated dopamine set point, right? Your dopamine point is high, which means normally foods stop feeling satisfying. By removing added salt and excess sugar temporarily, what we allow the brain to do is reset dopamine sensitivity, restore natural taste perception, recalibrate satiety signals. Eventually, food begins to taste naturally flavorful again, right? Once you've reset that palate. Number 3, starchy carbohydrates in phase 1 are put aside. No starchy carbohydrates in phase 1. Think about this. Amongst the 3 macronutrients, right? The 3 major macronutrients, okay? Protein, fats, and carbs, okay? Among the 3 major macronutrients, starchy carbohydrates produce the strongest insulin response out of all 3 of those, okay? Significant insulin response from the starchy carbohydrates. Insulin's job is to store energy. When insulin is elevated frequently, the body tends to store rather than release stored fuel. During phase 1, we temporarily remove starchy carbs so that the body can deplete excess glycogen stores, lower insulin levels, improve metabolic flexibility. Later in phase 2 and 3, starches are strategically reintroduced in controlled windows. Number 4, no high intensity cardio. A lot of you guys want to do the running, sprinting, cycling, and other high intensity cardio. And this is extremely demanding on the body, but they're actually one of the least efficient tools for reducing body fat long-term. I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. High intensity training can increase hunger drastically. Okay. You know exactly what I'm talking about. When you go for those long runs, the rest of the day, you're ravenous, right? This also puts the body under stress. So it increases cortisol. Cortisol, secreting too much cortisol, is not favorable to weight loss. This leads to compensation eating. You're overeating because you're super hungry. And so instead we prioritize low intensity, steady movements, which allow the body to burn fat without triggering excess hunger signals, AKA zone 2 cardio, which is beautiful for decreasing body fat percentages and losing unwanted weight. Number 5, no restaurants during the reset phase. Restaurants are not just places where we eat. They are high stimulus environments designed to increase consumption. Everything about restaurants is engineered for pleasure. Hidden oils, excess sodium, sugar and sauces, large portions. Even disciplined people struggle in these environments. But temporarily avoiding restaurants, when we do that, we remove the unnecessary temptation and create a controlled nutritional environment, which is super helpful when you're doing all these things at once. Number 6, be careful with certain people, places, and situations. This is addiction language, okay? As you know, I'm a counselor by trade, and so I incorporate a lot of these components. And in addiction therapy, when someone is struggling with a dependency, that's the first thing we say. Hey, be careful with people, places, and situations. This principle goes deeper than food. Certain environments and social situations can easily trigger old behaviors, right? They're anchored into our emotional system, and they can easily trigger old behaviors. Think about social pressure, emotional triggers, habit loops tied to specific environments. During the reset phase, we ask participants to be very intentional about the environments they expose themselves to. Why? Because discipline grows best in protected environments. It doesn't matter how disciplined you are. If you put yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're going to fall, right? And so we remove that out of the equation. Number 7, replace the sabotaging thought process, okay? Most people constantly think about food like this. What can I eat? What should I avoid? What sounds good right now? This creates decision fatigue and internal negotiation. You know exactly what I mean, those voices that bombard you. Instead, what we do inside of the EYB plan is that we flip the script. We ask participants to create elimination lists for a defined period of time, right? We just ask you to create a list so that you're not having to think or negotiate with yourself, right? This mindset becomes simple. For the next X weeks, I will only eat A, B, and C. This removes constant mental debate, right? This mental rumination that drives you crazy and oftentimes leads you to the wrong decisions. The brain stops negotiating and begins executing, which is super powerful in this process. The ultimate goal, right? And the thing that I want you to stay with here, okay, is none of these principles are designed to restrict someone forever. They are designed to help a person develop discipline, self-control, clear boundaries, new neurological patterns around food. Over time, new synaptic pathways are created. Healthy choices become natural, right? That automaticity kicks in. And what initially looked like restriction becomes something far greater. It becomes freedom and stewardship, okay? Because we're not just here to get fit. We're here to be great stewards of our temple. The Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan is an amazing multidisciplinary approach. And if you start to incorporate these things, if you're curious, I'm going to leave a link down below so that we can connect, no strings attached. But I'm telling you right now, if you've struggled, if you're looking for a different kind of approach and where you're not just counting calories, macros, points, or doing any of that stuff that everyone else is doing, but you want to approach this from a mind, body, spirit approach, then the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan has an amazing, sustainable solution for you. By the way, maybe you didn't hear me say this throughout the entire video, but we bring Jesus into the picture. If that's not for you, I get it. That's who we are. We don't apologize about that. We actually believe that the thing that makes the difference beyond anything else is actually incorporating Jesus into this process, because we serve an intricate God. The Bible says that he knit us in our mother's womb, and therefore he is interested in every single detail of our lives. And my friend, this is no different. So once again, if you're looking for a different approach, more importantly, a sustainable approach, I'll leave the link down below. I'd love to connect with you. If you enjoyed this video, I think you're going to love this video here. I'll talk to you guys soon. My name is JT Tapias with the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan. Talk to you soon. Peace.